Fringe, one of the things that comes up a lot is this idea of soul harvesting. That's what a lot of these entities are after. Do you give that much credit?
I do. I give it a lot of credit, unfortunately. So this is kind of what woke me up from my own stupor, which was I initially thought what was happening to me. I initially thought these were ETs from outer space, like ETs from other planets. And I kind of bought into the whole idea that they were just upgrading their own DNA. You know, they were going to help us a little, and then we were going to help them a little, even though it was super weird and awkward and bizarre. I thought they were ETs from outer space. And then sometime in November or December of 2022, I start realizing that this agenda is much more nefarious than what it appeared to be. And I realized that they are actually transferring my soul out of my body. This is something that a lot of Christians have a very difficult time with. It's been said to me, only God has authority over your soul. Okay, well, tell that to the aliens with the technology that can take me out of my body against my will. And it was just known. And so being in this telepathic environment, I tried to explain earlier, I'm picking up on some of their agenda and their thoughts and you know, what their motives, etc. were. And what I was picking up on was they were very interested in the human soul. There was some type of a reverse engineering program going on where they were trying to create the soul either for themselves, almost like a mimicry of a soul. They were trying to figure out our soul. I called it a reverse engineering program in my journal. And then if they weren't able to do that, they were going to hijack our souls and or trap us. And so this is an entire agenda. It's not just one thing. And throughout the abduction research, you will see this fascination with the human soul and this idea that they are possibly trying to hijack our souls, maybe to Trojan horse their way into, you know, the third heaven, just all kinds of interesting things coming up about the soul. And then there's the idea that they're actually siphoning our soul energy from us to use it in their technology. So it's multifaceted, but in my personal opinion, there's something there. And this is what sent me over the edge of realizing these are not ETs from other planets. Now, I don't discount the possibility of ETs from other planets, but what I was dealing with did not appear to be ETs from other planets. And they did seem to have this agenda with the human soul. So I don't discount that whatsoever.
Fringe, you said something before. We've touched on this idea of like a soul trap or something like that. And there's a lot of that in different belief systems. There are people who believe that the moon is actually some sort of it's meant to harvest souls. And that actually is what the game Pac-Man is birthed out of, which is Pac-Man is the moon and he's eating ghosts. And then of course you have the idea of like reincarnation, like a reincarnation trap, which like I'm not so quick to say that reincarnation doesn't exist. I'm more quick to say I don't think that we can just say souls are being recycled in their entirety from one physical form to the next, because so many people experience like being Cleopatra or something like that. And it's like maybe there's something else going on where we can access the experiences of somebody who lived previously or something like that. But along with the reincarnation narrative does go this idea of a trap, that we're being trapped in some sort of a cycle. And then of course, within the alien abduction narrative, there is a lot of talk like that this stealing of souls almost. And I mean, could you elaborate on that a little bit? What gives you that impression that you know, that births the phrase soul trap?
So some of this was just being in their environment and getting these weird downloads. So number one, have you guys heard of Ted Rice? So he was an abductee, kind of he's an old timer, and he worked with Carla Turner. So Ted Rice has seen the aliens put like almost like a headphone device on abductees, and they're basically downloading the narrative of past lives. And so is that the entirety of what's happening? No. But I think that a lot of people believe that they're in a past life, because of channeling and because of doing this QHHT type past life regression stuff. I think a lot of it is very similar to abductions. It's very similar. When you start looking at things like near-death experiences and the reincarnation and the past life stuff, it's very similar to what's happening to abductees. In the near-death research, there are several cases that kind of make, because I never believed in reincarnation, and then I did. There are cases where you have kids who are coming up with stuff that they just couldn't make up. They're drawing a picture of their past life and the school they went to and their parents and, some newspaper article and all this kind of stuff. So you have that side of it. But at the same time, you have kids who believe that they lived the same exact life. Like you could have 3 kids who believed that this is not what they believed, but they believed they were Cleopatra, right? They lived the same exact life. Okay, so how do we explain that? So at this point, I'm not convinced one way or the other on reincarnation. I think it is a possibility. I think it's a possibility for at least some people. What I am convinced of is at least half of it is nonsense from the actual aliens. I mean, when you have someone like Ted Rice who has seen them planting past life memories into people, how do you trust any of it at that point? So when it comes to the soul trap, you mentioned AI, you mentioned technology, but I think it's coming from both sides. So I think they're also coming at us from this hybrid side. And so whether reincarnation is real or not, our souls are coming from somewhere and they're coming into these physical bodies. And just what they were doing with me, it's so complicated to explain, but I knew before coming across any of the abduction research, I knew it was known that they were trying to reverse engineer the human soul. And if they couldn't reverse engineer it, they were going to tie it up or trap it and try to keep it for themselves. I don't understand the entirety of how they're going to do it, but that was made known to me. So what I think they're doing is I think that they have very carefully created these hybrids that are just enough human to actually house a human soul. But if you have any contact with these hybrids, you'll very quickly understand that at least most of them are sociopathic. They have no concept. They're not even actually allowed to think about things like God. And they're very much still tied into that hive mind. You explained the Greys earlier as kind of the worker bee drone types. They're still tied into that system. And so imagine a creature that is part human, that could house a human soul. But this human soul is actually tied up into the negative alien agenda and this hive mind agenda. And their ability then to choose God or to think that the thoughts are all controlled. You cannot have a thought in that environment, a stray thought, that it's not permitted. And so imagine that these hybrids, whether there are still hybrids being born on the ships, there's now some evidence to suggest that we have hybrids being born on Earth, just straight to human women, but they're hybrids. Somewhat to your point on the telepathy tapes, although I would never want to single any of those kids out as being hybrids for sure, because that could start a whole weird witch hunt thing, just like it could start with abductees. But just imagine these hybrids being tied into this hive-minded network and not being able to choose God, whether they're born here or born on the ships. To me, that's the ultimate soul trap. And I think that's what they're trying to do. I think that's what they're trying to accomplish. They're trying to take over the human race as we know it with their hybrids. And so imagine a human soul being born into that hybrid body and not being able to even think about God or choose God. They don't even have the inclination for it. So there is a researcher, and I can't remember his name, but he was, instead of doing a past life regression, he was doing a forward life regression on people. Every single one of them were born into a hybrid body, and all they were doing was working. And kind of creepy. So that's what I mean by the soul trap. And it could be happening on both sides, on both ends. I don't think it's just one single thing.
Well, to your
why
point,
only try one method?
right?
It reminds
No,
me
yeah.
in the book of Revelation where it says, men will want to die, but they'll be unable to. It's like it's something to do with this idea that you're fleshing out. That's where we're headed, or at least that's where they'd like us to head.
Well, they
I know
do
we're.
trade. I'm sorry, they're known to
No, go ahead.
trade longevity for loyalty. So there is going to be something to this. So most of our elites are looking for immortality.
Yes.
And there's going to be something to the AI, transhumanism component. It's going to merge with the negative alien agenda is transhumanism.
Yes.
And they're already doing it through
What
their
do you
hybrids.
believe the purpose or the reasoning behind this?
So I agree with you. Being in that environment for quite some time, especially a couple of years ago, I came away with knowing, and I say knowing loosely because they're very deceptive and they're very manipulative. And just because I know something from being in their environment doesn't mean that's not what they want me to think. So you have to be careful with that. But I came away with the knowing that they were trying to, and I wrote it down this way, they were trying to reverse engineer my soul. So what they were doing with me on board is they were trying to reverse engineer my soul. And I would just come away with knowing that this is what they were trying to do. But then I also knew that if they couldn't do that, that they were either going to try to hijack the soul, write it into heaven, just like you said, or try to trap us somehow in these hybrid bodies. And so I don't think it's one thing. I think it could be many things, but the ultimate goal is the same. And that is they are concerned with the destiny of the human soul and trying to use it for their own purposes. What that is, I'm not sure we know 100%, but it's hard to find an abductee who doesn't say, oh, this is a cosmic battle between good and evil, and they care about the human soul. I mean, even people who think this is a good thing, you just come away with knowing that this is what it's all about. And it's when I first realized what was happening to me, which was very difficult to wrap my mind around in the first place. But when I first realized it, I truly thought that these entities were our space brothers. So even though I was a Christian, I thought these are ETs from outer space. They're just, I don't know where they come from. It didn't bother me that they were maybe from outer space. And maybe they were trying to upgrade their DNA, or they did something bad to themselves. And, they were trying to help themselves out with our DNA. And it took me a long time to realize that that was not the case. And when I realized that they were taking my soul out of my body and trying to reverse engineer it, that's when I said, wait a minute. Why would an alien from outer space care about my soul? Why would they care about that? That makes no sense. And I actually have an entire video out that's over an hour long that explains how the aliens tried to get me to change my religion, which is, if they were actually aliens from outer space, they would not care about, right? They would just study it. They might be curious, exactly. They might wonder, but they wouldn't try to get me to change it. So it's definitely spiritual. There's spiritual war, spiritual battle going on, and it has to do with our soul. We might not know exactly what it is, but it's not good. They are hostile to humans, and they don't care about us except for that part of us that they're trying to use for whatever purposes. I don't know exactly, but it's not going to end well for some of us anyway.
True. Yeah. It's can I ask you a question? So you're saying that they would like remove your soul. How was that? Like that sounds something that would be very traumatic, and deceitful almost at the same time.
Well, it took me a while to even realize that they were doing it. So this was happening to me over a period of a long time. Once I even was able to admit to myself, okay, there's something going on here. This is not normal. This is not right. I went through a period of them. I'm going to try to make it short because it's literally an episode by itself. But I went through a period of them trying to convince me I was a starseed. I was here to spread the light to the world, that these abductions were for our own good. And you're going to hear a lot of people, I would say the majority of abductees will say the same thing that they tried to convince me of. It's all propaganda. I mean, they just want us buying into their agenda because it's helpful to them. If we go tell other people as an abductee, or people will call themselves contactees or experiencers, if I go tell everybody, oh, it's for our own good, and I had a positive experience, it's all love and light, well, that just spreads their propaganda. So I was one of those people. They were working pretty hard on me. You're a star seed. You're here to spread the love and light. We're here to save the humanity, all this kind of nonsense. So it took me a long time to even differentiate between a physical abduction and when they were just taking my soul out of my body. So that took me a while because I didn't even know it was possible. When I realized they were just taking my soul, and we could call it an astral body and the consciousness, when they were taking my astral body out of my physical body, that was the big red flag for me. So that was when I said, wait a minute, what is happening? What is going on? These entities, or in my personal opinion at the time, no entity should have the authority to remove my soul from my body. That should be the purview of the Lord God Almighty. And that's it. Like, I don't even know if angels should be able to do that, in my personal opinion,
Agreed.
right?
I agree.
Even the good
Yes.
guys, let's just stop. And so when I realized that was happening, it took me a long time to realize that was happening. There were many times that I would be back in my bed and go, wait a minute, did they take my physical body, or are they taking just my soul? And so when I realized they were taking my soul, and I was at times, and I'm going to say something that may be a little wild for your audience.
That's all right. That's all right. They're pretty accepting.
They're on board. Okay.
Yeah.
I was being put into what I can only explain as a television screen or a computer screen. So some type of AI interface. I was being put into, and it felt like
That's terrifying. I'm sorry, but that is
it's
that
terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying.
It felt like a trap or a container. It felt like I was being held prisoner, I suppose is a good word, in this environment. But there were other times when I realized, wait, this is not my body. Like, I'm in someone else's body. And what are they doing to this body? And all the different types of experiments they were doing. I went through a spiritual crisis because I didn't think that these entities should have the authority to remove my soul from my body and to put me somewhere else, like completely not in my own physical body.
I agree. And I got one quick question. So you keep referencing soul. Is it also your consciousness? Are you thinking, like, are those tied together? Is that one and the same?
To me, they're tied together. So you can get people. So I have been in situations where I considered the possibility that my astral body was still inside my body, but that my consciousness was gone. So I've considered both, and it's possible that both are possible. But most of this time, this period that I'm talking about, I could feel them taking my astral body out of my body, because I've been out of my body my whole life. I've been out of my body. It's all the time. It's happened a couple times this week. So I have some awareness. I'm not saying it's a perfect awareness, but I have some awareness of being pulled out of my body, being put back into my body, being in someone else's body. I'm actually to the point where I have confirmed being in someone else's body. I have been in other people's bodies I know and confirmed with them, hey, what were you doing on Tuesday? I'm making this up. What were you doing on Tuesday? What were you wearing? Where were you at? And I have been in that person's body. And this has happened more than once. I've had confirmation. I've had abductions with people I've never met in person, but I've met them online and seen them and said, hey, did you have any weird dreams last night? Well, in fact, I did. I had this dream. And of course, being the investigator I am, I let them tell me what happened on Tuesday. I'm not going to give them too much information so that they can scam me. And so where were we going with this? So when I realized that they were transferring at this time, my astral body was being transferred out of my body. That's when I just said, what is this? How is this possible? What are these things? This is what sent me down the rabbit hole of realizing that these are not aliens at all. And I was coming away with that knowing they were trying to reverse engineer the soul. And if they can't do that, they're going to hijack it or try to trap us in these. And I think that what they're trying to do is trap us into these hybrid bodies. So a lot of times it's the astral body. Sometimes I think it's just the consciousness, but what they can also do is what's called a virtual reality, where you don't go anywhere at all. They just tap right into your consciousness, and they can put you in an environment. And this will be a lot. I think Vicky Joy talks about this a lot.
She does. Yeah.
They just tap right into your consciousness. They put you into an environment that is very much like the astral realm or the astral environment, and put you through all kinds of different, I call them problems. And your astral body hasn't gone anywhere. So I think they're capable of a few different things. They can take the physical body, they can take the astral body with the consciousness, and I think they can just hijack the consciousness on its own without actually even removing your astral body from your physical body.
Wow. That is intense, and that is deep. And when you're talking about like being put into other people's bodies, I've never really talked about this on my show before, but I've had that exact same experience as well, where we talked about this before the show, where I'm looking at myself and I'm not me. I'm in another body. I know who I am. And I've even told the people who I'm with that, no, I'm actually this, I'm this 40-year-old guy in
Right.
this, this other body, other person's body. And I kind of have to go through the motions of living their life, and doing completing the tasks that they need to do. But yeah, it's
a task or a problem. And when they transfer you to these bodies, there's always a mission. I call it a mission. I know I'm on a mission. I know I'm taking that person's consciousness over for a period of time, and I know what the mission is. And as soon as I'm done with the mission, I'm usually gone. It's something that it's way on the fringe, but you would not believe the number of people this is happening to. And there's going to be an overlap, MyLabs component to that. And so
MyLabs, is that like the military, I can't remember, military intelligence labs?
It's a short for military abduction, and it's not a very good term. Okay. It's a very old term. It came along way before I was in the community, but it's short for military abduction. But in reality, it's not your brother who's enlisted in the armed services who's doing these abductions. These are deep black projects. A lot of it is contractors. You're Raytheon and your Lockheed Martin, but way deeper even than that. And I think that so there's a human component to this, where we have humans working side by side with non-human entities. And I think they might all be working toward the same thing. Some of them have made deals with the entities. Some of them have made deals, for the afterlife or even for this life, power and control type stuff. But yeah, it gets pretty dark. So the military abductions, a lot of times abductees are being used in military abductions to complete these missions. I mean, I'm in touch with abductees who are on missions a couple of times a week, and it's very military and very mission oriented. It would be as if you were popped into a military body, and that military body is out on some kind of special forces mission. And this is happening to people. I know it sounds insane. Some people call it super soldier.
I was about to say, this sounds like 20 and back as well, something along that line as well.
Along that line. So I've never, to my own personal knowledge, the 20 and back thing, I've never experienced that. I know I've talked to a lot of people who have, but it's something very similar, where the consciousness and astral is just transferred right out of the body. You're put into another body to get a mission accomplished, and you're sent right back. And again, it's one of those things that just falls. It's even further gone down the conspiracy highway than alien abduction is the military abduction. It's something that most people, they just laugh at it.
Wow. This is incredible. Listening to all this, like it sounds like, that like there's 20 Mbacas over here, and then we have like these other types of abductions over here. But if you put it all together, this sounds like a much greater percentage than we really are thinking about. It's not just like, 1%, 0.5%. This might be a lot bigger than we come to realize. Like this might be huge. I don't know. It's kind of blowing my mind right now thinking about this, especially when you started, like saying, putting these all together, especially with these consciousness abductions. I don't know if you know Daniel Rekshan. He has this website called DSETI. It's the Dream Science and Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and he talks about consciousness abduction as well, and it's quite interesting. And so and that's, I think, plays into all this lost time as well. But it's interesting. That might be someone for you to talk to.
Yeah, for sure. I'm always interested to hear that kind of thing. I just heard a video recently of a MUFON investigator in Florida, and she was saying that a lot of the abductions these days, people are actually watching their own astral body like fly out of their body, and their physical body is still laying in the bed. And it's these entities taking them onto a spaceship. So this is where it got very confusing for me, because I had not been exposed to any other abductees or any of the abduction research. I was just figuring out for myself what was going on. It took me an extraordinary amount of time to realize there are some times when my physical body did not leave this bed. And yet here I am, on a ship in getting a gynecological exam, meeting a hybrid child, flying around in a spaceship. And how is that possible? How are these entities able to do an exam on what is not my physical body? Because my physical body is still in the bed as far as I know.
Right.
And then there were times when I would come back with marks on my physical body. So whatever they're doing to the astral body would transfer into the physical body. So that gets super creepy. How is that possible? How is it that whatever the astral body, energy body, subtle body, whatever you want to call it, it's everything we are. It's us without the physical body. How are they doing exams? Possibly even creating pregnancies? I mean, does that even sound right? Like that's possible? And so when I think of things that are possible in our 3D physical reality, I think of that as impossible until it kept happening, until I thought, so I could set up a camera. I set up a camera in my bedroom for months. And sometimes the camera would glitch and the Wi-Fi would go out and it wouldn't pick me up going to the bathroom. It wasn't perfect. But there were times when I thought, I'm almost positive my physical body didn't leave, yet I would come back with a giant bruises on my body. And so how are they doing that? How is that happening? How are they taking the astral body out? And I've said this before, but I think a lot of abductions are them taking the astral body. And I think most abductees, it feels so real, and it is real, but it feels so physical that they believe it's their physical body. And sometimes it's not. Now, the hybrids that they're making, they're taking physical eggs out of women's physical bodies and they're creating these physical creatures. This is a physical thing. It's not just spiritual. So how do we reconcile that with me and other abductees returning to their bodies after a likely an astral abduction? How does that happen? How does what happened to the astral body transfer to the physical body? And I'm sure someone out there understands it. It's hard for me.